Hello, good morning. Happy Thursday. Yeah, it's Thursday today. Uh Normally don't stream on Thursdays. Usually, or at least recently, it's been Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays have been the stream days. But I couldn't stream on Wednesday. Couldn't stream on Monday, so to get two streams in this week, Tuesday and Thursday it was. All right, so today's going to be an interesting day because we're going to be doing some exploration. A couple weeks ago, I went to Boulder Startup Week and I met with the CTO for FusionAuth and learned about them, what they do. Chatted with him about sort of like the company philosophy, and I'm liking what I'm hearing about so far. They are a authentication platform. Think very similar to Auth0. They would be in direct competition with them, but they have a community edition, which you can run in Docker locally, and you can self-host it, which means that if you don't want to, you don't have to send your data to their servers. You can keep control of everything yourself, which I think is rather nice. Plus, I like the idea that we could then do more offline development with authentication, because that's a big problem with Auth0. So today is all about exploring that, which means it's exploration hat time. All right, so what do we want to do here? First, I think let's create a repo for this, and then we can put any questions that we have during exploration time in there, and then the answers that we find. Also, Aniziki, which I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly or not. Hello, how are you doing today? And thank you for redeeming testing. Testing doesn't do anything. Unfortunately, it's a testing one. I probably should have put a note in there, but thank you for redeeming it. Where's my mouse? There you are. All right, let's go find something. C code Brooks builds. Do I have like an exploring? I don't. Let's do. I don't know if I want to do this right away with authentication. So I think what we're going to do is create sort of like I don't know if it'll be like a mono repo or just some random little scripts, or maybe just the README. I'm not sure. We're going to play around with it. So with that, let's just take exploring FusionAuth. We'll init this, and I can GitHub repo create that exploring FusionAuth Brooks builds public. All right. Yes, go ahead and add the remote to that. There we go. Okay. So let's touch a README. All right. So I guess we'll start with some links. So obviously, to begin with, we have FusionAuth itself. And FusionAuth, this is their website, FusionAuth.io. And then we can have some questions. So what are we attempting to explore here? So I guess one question here can be, and how do I want to do this? Do I want to make each one like a title, or maybe each one could be like a title for this. So what is FusionAuth? Let's go actually find out what they say, because we have previously what I consider them to be, but I haven't used it yet. So what does FusionAuth say that it is? FusionAuth is the customer authentication and authorization platform that makes developers' lives awesome. You'll get all the features your app needs, plus a customizable, scalable solution you can run on any computer anywhere in the world. So it's not that different than what I said, maybe a little bit more marketing speak, but basically we have authentication and authorization. So we get both the authentication, the auth stuff, both the auth stuff. It's a platform, so it connects two things together. They're focused on developer experience. You get all the features your app needs, plus a customizable, scalable solution that can run on any computer anywhere in the world. So this is where the Docker stuff comes in. And the scalable part, my guess would be, so we can just take this and copy it. Now, I guess like another question is, how is it scalable? Like what does that really mean? I have some guesses. If we can throw this into a Docker container, we can scale this horizontally by just spinning up more Docker containers and using something like a load balancer, in which case then FusionAuth itself would be stateless if that is indeed the case. So I guess we could do like maybe an assumption. The one problem about using Helix for this is I don't think I spelled that correctly. But not a problem. FusionAuth won't tell me anything. Or a guess. Yeah, that could be also good. Nick Maffei, hello. How are you doing today? FusionAuth can scale horizontally via Docker containers. Just throw a load balancer in front of it. You're doing really good? Yeah, and things are going well for me. So thank you for that. Let's see. So that's that thing. We'll come back to that in the future. Scaling is not necessarily something I'm too concerned with right now. I am considering replacing Auth0 with FusionAuth if this turns out to be something I really like and actually something I want to continue playing around with. Another thing that I could sort of looking into this for is, do I want to switch whenever I teach authentication to use this instead of Auth0? Okay, so other things that I guess we can add that in here, which is not necessarily questions, but where I want to go with this. So we have two possibilities right now, which is replace Auth0. I guess there's no space. Replace Auth0 in LMS with FusionAuth. And the other one would be, okay, you've used Auth0 in one of your classes and it's been okay, but not great. I'm quite interested in this exploration. Nice. Yeah, I've used Auth0 quite extensively in classes that I've taught. I think the thing that I like the most about it, well, I guess like there's two things that I think are really nice about Auth0, which is the generous free tier and the ability, like it's simple, right? Like it's really easy to get started with. Now there's a lot of growth that you can have with it, so it doesn't necessarily have a low cap to what you can do with it, but students can get started with it pretty quickly. That's what we're going to look for here, is like how easy is it to get started with it. So maybe that's another question here. So how easy to get started? I don't even know if I want to do a guess on this one. We can just go ahead and try it out. So obviously they have start for free here. They have a get demo. We have a pricing. Let's actually just take a look at pricing. So they have a we host and a you host section. So pricing with a we host is obviously going to be pretty it's going to be costly in some way. And my guess is somewhere around $30 a month, but I don't actually know for certain. Let's find out with uhost what that is. No, more expensive than that. So $125 per month, billed monthly for the first 10K users. Do they have an annual plan? Oh, billed annually. So they do have that. So you save $5 per month if you go annual. Now notice it's for the first 10K users, but over here they clarify that as active users. So that might be another thing to sort of like take a look into. And then they just have like extra features that you get. Now, there is this community plan, which is the free version, unlimited users, and this is them host. So they can host you for free, which that's nice too. No, that's a download. That's kind of confusing because under you host, so self-host, wait a second. I misread this. I very much misread this. Okay, hold on. This is my dyslexia kicking in. I read this backwards as like, okay, for some reason I thought this was like a me host or I host. Never mind. FusionAuth hosts, $37 per month. Not bad. Okay, so that's a little bit more expensive than the $30 a month I thought, but not too much more. They give you a single server, no backups, but it's a private instance. They think it's ideal only for dev testing. For business type stuff, they recommend the $225 per month per year. But that also gives you a custom domain name, which you don't get here, which that's also interesting. So like this would be good for, I guess like I would still imagine that this would be good for startups. But okay, let's go in and just download it and see how it is getting going. So download FusionAuth Community Edition. Self-hosted is always free. So if we host this ourselves, we get it for free. Now, in pricing for uhost, so iHost, there are paid plans for if we are hosting it ourselves. So if I throw this on DigitalOcean or AWS EC2 or ECS, which is probably where I would host this, somewhere on there, you would get these. And my guess is that you either get the community edition, which may be open source, or you can get the version that has more features. So that's going to be interesting. And we can actually look at the features, right? So we have core features. So that's Auth, all the Auth stuff. They just have premium features, which I guess you could see all features. Premium features, breach password detection. Okay, so basically it can just check stuff for you and do other fun things. LDAP integration is nice. Legacy database integration is really nice if you're like moving from one database to another, or like a self-hosted authentication to another one. This is actually a really nice feature. Interesting that custom scopes is not even starter, it's essentials, but this looks decently nice. Unlimited connections on self-host, obviously. Actually, connectors. No, community doesn't have any connectors whatsoever. Although they have more information. So like a lot of this, we're not going to really understand what it really means. Core features. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so users, groups, tenant. Oh, you can have multiple tenants on Community Edition. That's nice. Skimmis, hello. How are you doing today? If email SMS is advanced. Yeah, I do see that. Advanced MFA, email SMS. Let's take a look at, yeah, they don't have MFA under core features. Where would MFA be? Like, oh, basic MFA. Okay, so under authentication, basic MFA, which is supported by Community Edition here, is like Google Authenticator, one-time password, and an app, which I'm not sure what the app is. But okay, so you can do MFA, but they won't let you do email or SMS, which either of those I wouldn't recommend for MFA anyways. So yeah, it's actually like, it's not bad at all. Like you can use one of the best types of MFAs out here. I guess like the new type of MFA, which is even better than this, is the and the name just left me. It's the what is it? It's I can't think of the name anymore. But maybe they have that as part of basic MFA. Passwordless magic link is actually part of this too, which that's even like if you want to just use email, that kind of works there. That's great. Forgot password. Like all these things are what you want to use. Brute force detection, social logins, federated third-party login in Community Edition. That is nice. Passkeys. Yes, that's what it is. Passkeys. Okay. Now, can I search for passkey? Features passkeys. If I open all, I don't know if these are loaded up. I didn't look at the HTML code. So let me just open these up just to make sure it's not like hiding them and not loading it into the DOM. And then, yeah, it's only this one word here. Talk to an expert. Okay, so to me that means passkeys are not part of Community Edition, or I don't know. I can't tell from this. This feels less like documentation page and more like a sales page for it. All right, but let's go ahead and now if I go start for free. All right, we have a 5-minute guide. Let's do that. I actually have their shirt, which I wore when I went to one of their events, which was hilarious because many of the other employees from FusionAuth were wearing them and nobody who wasn't an employee was wearing it. So everybody thought that I worked at FusionAuth. So that was great. Okay, so wait, are they saying that? Yeah, they'll send you a shirt if you follow this guide and then you send them a screenshot with that. That's awesome. If any of you do this and get the shirt, let me know. 5-minute guide. Okay, at the end of this guide, you will know how to add login, sign in, log out to a Node.js application using Express and Pug. Okay, so this tutorial is only for Node.js, Express, and Pug, which is it'd be nice if they had like some more guides. I met somebody who's working on a company that is working with FusionAuth, and they're building guides and SDKs for many of the other applications. They do not have one yet for Rust. It has been something that some of them have thought about, but I don't think there's enough Rust users to warrant them spending money on it yet. But hey, who knows? Maybe if we get enough demand for it, then that'll be something they create. But we can go ahead and create like a really basic something for this. Intro to FusionAuth. When using FusionAuth, when your user begins the authentication process, you typically send them to FusionAuth. FusionAuth authenticates them and returns them to your application with a token indicating the login was successful. With this architecture, FusionAuth is the only system that sees confidential credentials such as passwords. You can add multi-factor authentication, MFA, and other security features in one place. Adding, removing, and auditing users' application access occurs in FusionAuth. Pre-built functionality like registration, single sign-on, and profile management speeds application? I think that should be speeds up application development. FusionAuth is available both as an installable piece of software and a SaaS service, so you have options. The software functionality is the same no matter where you run it. So, I mean, that makes sense. Like, that's very similar to all of the other competitors in the same space. We basically just say, hey, FusionAuth, we're trusting that you're spending your time making the best authentication experience. So we don't need to worry about it, but we can also own it. Choose your own adventure. One of FusionAuth's unique attributes is the variety of places you can install it. Bare metal cloud container, yep. Windows, macOS, Linux, sure. You can learn more about different options in the installation guide, but for this guide, you'll pick one of 3 options. Please choose an option below to explore FusionAuth. Okay, so we have Docker, FastPath, and Sandbox. Okay, so Docker obviously requires Docker and Docker Compose. We have both of those. This is the best choice if you have Docker and Docker Compose installed. Okay, so this is the one we're going to do. FastPath requires a local database, Postgres or MySQL. This is the best option if you have a local MySQL or Postgres database installed and want to get the full installation experience. Now, this is really interesting. Does this mean that we can use FusionAuth with our own database? So not only are we using software like FusionAuth, which does the entire authentication stuff for us that we don't have to now write, but also we can truly own the passwords because they're stored in the database of our choice. That would be amazing. The Sandbox, which is a public shared location with data regularly wiped. This is the best choice if you don't want to install anything and are okay with other people seeing your test users, applications, and data. However, this choice is the quickest way to test drive an application and integration with FusionAuth without installing anything. That's actually really nice. I kind of wish that more companies would start doing sandbox type things. Each of these options will end up at the same place. You'll have a functioning application with logic, with login and logout provided by FusionAuth. Afterwards, you can dig deeper into a number of areas. Okay, so we're going to go with Docker. Let's see. Docker install for the 5-minute guide. You've chosen to install FusionAuth via Docker and Docker Compose. This is the best option if you have Docker installed locally or you plan to run FusionAuth in a Docker-compatible environment such as Kubernetes and want to learn more about how FusionAuth runs in Docker. If you've arrived here directly, start with the 5-minute. Okay, yeah, we've started there. They have a guide, a video guide of how to get going, which is nice. We need to have Node.js installed. They're using 14 and 18, and you need to have Docker installed. So I have Docker up and running. And they want us to have Node version 18 running, which I can easily set that up too. This document has been tested with Docker version 20, but should work with other versions, which, I mean, I have, what version of Docker do we have going? 26. So it's been a while since they've updated this documentation. Here are steps to take up FusionAuth and configure it to provide login and logout functionality for your application. So install and start FusionAuth. You are following the Docker 5-minute guide. So you'll use Docker Compose dot to use FusionAuth, download the Docker Compose YAML and the .env files. Okay, and they're having us go to GitHub user content. So they want us to go to FusionAuth containers. So they actually have a FusionAuth. Let's go to, right? FusionAuth. Yeah, FusionAuth all one word. They want us to go to FusionAuth containers, which they pinned. Main, okay, then Docker FusionAuth and then Docker Compose. So Docker FusionAuth, and here's their Docker Compose YAML. It is up to date. So they're using version 3. That's the version that doesn't really mean anything because they don't need a version anymore. Services, okay, so they're going to start a database, which is Postgres version 16. Environment, okay, so they're grabbing this from the environment. So we'll have to provide them a username and password for this. And they have a health check for it. Nice. Interesting. They're using a separate network for this instead of a default network for the application. Restart unless stopped. Okay, so just keep on going, and they do the volume, so we keep the database over restarts. Okay, so then we have the search, which does open search project. I'm not familiar with them. Environment, so cluster name, discovery type, single node, no name search, plugin security disabled, true, bootstrap. Okay. Oh, it's a fork of Elastic. Okay, nice. Having a separate network is good. Then no one can see the database directly. You're guessing. Normally, Docker creates its own network. It's like I guess like it gets weird, right? Because there's a default Docker network, but when you use Docker Compose, it spins up a network just for everything within there. And so if they're putting everything on the same network, I guess that's where it gets interesting. It's like, are they doing that, or are they having multiple networks for this one app? Both are perfectly fine. Oh, they put some limits in here too, so it can't take over all of your resources, which is nice. And here's where we start exposing some ports. So I don't believe we exposed any ports on the database. Okay, so we have that. Then FusionAuth itself. And we can see here's their image. So FusionAuth app is the name of their app. It'd be nice if they could eventually get, actually I wonder, they might be, if they can get like official image from Docker, that'd be amazing, right? Depends on the DB, condition service healthy, depends on search. So okay, so basically search and DB need to be started up first. Does search require the database? It does not. We have some environment variables. So where we're going, okay, so go to Postgres, DB. Oh, I guess, yeah, okay, that's just the database. And then they have database username, password. Oh, the root database username, password, and then the database username, password are separate things. Okay, they're doing some proper database stuff here. We can set how much memory they have access to. That's nice. They have a runtime mode. And okay, then their app URL. So they're going to run on port 9011. And they have a health check, which is nice. Yeah, okay, so we can see they have two networks. So FusionAuth is going to be a member of both networks, DBNet and SearchNet. Okay, and then we have all the volumes too, which is nice. So let's go ahead and just grab this, and we will, where do we want to put this? I guess we'll just throw this into the app, right? So that will go, should I call this Docker Compose here? They named this with the actual dash, but I think now it's, we can do compose.yaml. I'm gonna actually just call this FusionAuth compose YAML. Okay, so we've got you, and then you want me to, oh, interesting. Okay, so they also have an example.env for us to use too, which is right here. So here's what they're suggesting for us to have. For the .env, which, now I noticed that they were using environment here instead of environment file. So that's also interesting. So I'll throw that in there, and then before we forget, because as we noticed, that will just immediately expose us in case we put anything really secret in here. Now we don't have that showing up anymore. Edit these files as needed. The stock.env file will contain the following values. You'll want to modify the database password and ensure the Postgres user and Postgres password values are correct. You may also override any of these values using environment variables. Right, obviously. Okay, so do I need, with a .env file, do I not need to do anything to have it, have Docker Compose run that? I thought that I would need to tell it to load from a .env file. Maybe it just automatically does? That was me assuming things about Docker, apparently. Let's see, now, looking at this, database username, FusionAuth, the database password is that entire thing. We can go ahead and I can make some changes to that. I'll probably do like a keyboard cat type thing. Let's see, database password, and I'm going to change this to, nope, not with the semicolon in it. There it goes. Okay. App memory, I'm going to leave that at 512 half a gig. Runtime mode, development. We're going to see what that is. OpenSearch Java ops. Okay. Is that a Java app? Is the OpenSearch using Java behind the scenes? And then obviously our Postgres user and Postgres password. We can change the Postgres password too. Okay. So that's all saved. And then to run this, nothing special. All we need to do is Docker Compose up -d, which, don't we need the -- wait Or maybe you don't need that if it's an up-d. Let's just try this though. We'll open up Docker Compose. So come on, where's my terminal? Docker Compose up-d, and then immediately we're gonna open up another window. Docker Compose logs, and is it F for follow? Oh, and yeah, this won't work because I need to give it the name of the file, and I need to remember. Okay, so it's not up. I think it's -f. Yeah, -f. Docker Compose -f FusionAuth compose.yaml up-d to start it. We can do Docker Compose -f fusion that, and I want logs. -f for follow. Is it -t? What is it? It is -f. I guess it won't let me do this until it's running. Okay, so you're up and running. We can now, there we go. Now we can see our Docker stuff running, all the logs. Not really anything like super fun to look in here right now. Bunch of just sort of like setting up the database, setting up search, configuration initialized successfully. Okay, that's great. Now we can visit localhost 9011 to configure FusionAuth. Okay, let's take a look. I'll go ahead and use Firefox Dev Edition for this. And here we go. We have it. It redirected us to admin setup wizard. So because it knows that there's no users in here, so the first person gets to create the admin user. So obviously that's something to be aware of. If we're run this like live on production and we want to set it up right away, don't just like set it up and then go walk and have lunch or something. It's you don't want the first person to get here to be not you. So let's do create the admin user. So Brooks, I'll just do Brooks Zerker. I have accounts at builds.com is an email that I use. Let's see. Email password will of course be admin. Would it let me do that? I'm actually curious if it will let me do a bad password like that. License agreement. So to accept, you have to go view their license. I'm just gonna accept it. You can optionally receive updates. No. We'd love to hear about how you learned. I learned from an event. Tell us more. It will be Boulder Startup Week, CTO lunch. So this is interesting. So this is off localhost. So they're going to send this to them unless I block it. No, never save. There we go. Okay, so your Skimus, you cannot use admin. We have to use an actual like decent password, right? And even if I want to say like, what is it? Password? Password is minimum length 8, right? Oh, it lets me use password. Okay, so they just let you do whatever you want, and it's like it's up to me to have a good password. Okay, so here's our admin panel. Nice. So we are in development mode, and that's from that environment variable for dev mode. They have an entire sort of like onboarding thing here, which is nice, and a nice little dashboard. Cool. Let's go back to our guide. Once FusionAuth starts up successfully, you will be taken to the setup wizard. This is where you will create the administrator account for FusionAuth and accept the license. Record the email and password you choose for the administrator account. You won't be able to recover this without setting up an email server, which is beyond the scope of this tutorial. You can also sign up for the FusionAuth newsletter, which is a great way to stay up to date on FusionAuth releases and new features. We will never pitch you, hard sell, or sell your information, so feel free to sign up. Here's what the setup wizard page looks like. And obviously mine was dark because I have that dark mode on. Yeah, otherwise you need to add a whole list of unaccepted words, admin 1, 2, 3, 4, and whatnot. And if I remember correctly, NIST like many years ago came up with updated password requirements where they basically said like, just stop trying, just like do minimum length, and that's it. Like other than that, like every like requirement that you stop with a password is hurting people's usage of like password managers. And NIST is like all in on password managers now, which is good. I think that's a good thing. Clicking submit here will complete the setup wizard and log you into the FusionAuth administrative user interface. Create an application and configure the OAuth settings. Once you arrive in a FusionAuth admin UI, the first thing you need to do is create an application. An application is something that a user can log into. This is the application you are building or that you are migrating to use FusionAuth. Click the application menu option on the left side of the page or the setup button in the box at the top of the page. Okay, so they want us to go to applications on here. So we go to applications, and it looks like they have one application already set up for us, which is, my guess is FusionAuth itself. with 37 different roles. Nice. This will take you to the listing page for applications. Next, you'll click the green plus button, the add button at the top of the page. Right, so we're gonna add a new application. Oh, interesting, they start me here. Leaving this blank will auto-generate, interesting. So we can have a UUID or we can override it with whatever string we want. That's actually kind of interesting. On the application form, provide a name for your application. This is only used for display purposes and a couple of items on the OAuth tab. Start with a simple setup that allows existing users to log into your application. There is no need to add any roles or registration configuration. Okay, so this can just be whatever. So testing. Theme, no theme selected, the tenant configuration will be used. Specify an application specific theme here to override. And so we have FusionAuth and FusionAuth simple. I'll just keep it with no theme selected. We could set up a bunch of roles for the application, which is nice. If I remember correctly, in Auth0, the roles are just Auth0 wide, and this is now application wide, which I wonder, I'm curious about that, because I would imagine being able to set up multiple systems, like maybe like a role that I do want across multiple applications, but some are specific only. I wonder how that will work. Well, we can get to that later. In fact, let's add this into our README. Okay, so can we have multiple roles shared across applications? All right, so I don't think we have to, did they suggest anything else? When you click on the OAuth tab, okay, so if we click on to OAuth tab, I'm going to expose some secret stuff, but it's secret stuff for this application, which is local only. So you shouldn't be able to use it. Now they're pointing out to the authorization redirect, the logout URL, the enabled grants, and require registration. Most of the defaults will work, but provide the following items: an authorized redirect URL. This is the route controller in the application's backend that will complete the OAuth grant and obtain a token. For this example, add localhost 3000 OAuth redirect. You will see example code below for this route. Note that when you type or paste values into this text field, you will also click the pop-up that appears. Otherwise, the value will not be saved. Okay, so let's go ahead and authorized redirect URL. Go to that. Now that's interesting. If I just click away, oh, okay. So I have to hit enter or click on the add. Specify a valid logout URL. This is where users will be redirected to after they are logged out of FusionAuth's OAuth front end of your application. For this example, set the value to just logout. Oh, that's a different interface than this one. That just accepts it. Authorized request origin URLs. Okay, I don't think we're caring about that. Make sure the authorization code grant is selected and enabled grants. Okay, so authorization code grant. Now we also have device implicit password and refresh token. These seem like decent defaults. It looks like you might be able to specify multiple redirect URLs. Yeah, let's check that out. Oh yeah, definitely. So this would allow you to have a local host. So if I wanted to like deploy this and I want like one FusionAuth, but it's for local development, maybe like a dev server and a production server, I can totally use this. Or I can have like a beta version of the site up and then a production up, but one authentication for all of them. This would work for that. Okay, authorization code grant is enabled. Set the require registration field to true. Require registration. Once you have configured the application, you'll click the blue save button at the top of the page, okay? Then click the green magnifying glass on the list view next to your application. Scroll down to the OAuth configuration section and copy the client ID and client secret values off to a text file. You'll use them later. Okay, so I'm curious about this. So we have our client ID and client secret are just fully exposed here. That's good to know. If you're ever gonna do this on a stream, for example, in front of a bunch of people, it is not hidden behind something that I click to just copy into my paste buffer. So that is something good to know. Now, this is just here, right? So that means I can come back to it and review this at any time. So I don't really need to copy this off into another file. I can come back to it at any time. Grant permissions. Next, grant the user you created in the setup wizard permissions to log into your new application. This can be done from the user management section of the FusionAuth admin UI. Click the user's link in the navigation. If needed, search for the user. Manage the user's details by clicking on the black Manage button. So that would be that thing there, I think. So they want me to go take a look at users. We have my accounts, which I actually kind of want. Have I added that email into my email over here? I may or may not have. Let's see, where's my list of emails? Actually, I don't think I have. Okay, so it's on my other profile on this computer here. So I'll check later to see if they sent me an email. But okay, so in here we have all the normal things. It wants me to do, now this, wait. Yeah, okay, so we just came in here. We're in a manage, but we're in a manage page. Once you're in this user's account, you'll click the add registration button. This will take us to a page that will allow us to add a registration for this user to the new application. Registrations associate users with applications. You may have to select an application if there are multiple options. Right, because if we have multiple applications for them to go into. So we can, all right, so FusionAuth is this thing itself, right? It's the actual FusionAuth app. And I want to add my user in to the application testing with a new username. Oh, so I can just add in that, and then, ooh, we have a bunch of different languages that we can add in for metadata. We have, I'm on mountain, and then we don't have any roles set up. Okay, so that's good to know. For this tutorial, you don't need to provide any additional information for the registration. Click the Save button at the top. Now the user has permissions to log into your application. Note, adding a registration to a user is not always required to let your users log into your application. FusionAuth supports self-service registration. With self-service registration enabled, a registration will be added when a user signs up. Learn more about self-service registration. Okay, so we can go learn that elsewhere. Isn't that Danish person photo they're showing an actor? Kamali or someone? Is that? I don't know. Is that I don't really follow actors very much, so I have no idea. If anybody else recognizes them, let us know. Okay, now the user has permissions to log into your application. Note, adding a registration to a user is not always required to let your user log into your application. FusionAuth supports self-service. Oh wait, we already talked about that. You want to make sure that your user account has a first name, which should appear under the picture. If they don't, use the Edit Profile button. Okay, so we have the first name. Configure the backend to complete the login. Before you test the login, examine the route controller in your application's backend that will complete the OAuth workflow, which we don't have right now. After a user logs into FusionAuth's OAuth frontend successfully, their browser will be redirected to the URL you provided in the configuration step above. This redirect will contain a query parameter called code that contains the one-time use OAuth authorization code from FusionAuth. Your application code provides the code parameter in a request to FusionAuth. It will exchange the code for an access token, which can be used for a variety of purposes. In order to complete the process, you'll use a sample application which uses the FusionAuth TypeScript client library, express, and plug templates. And the code is available for download. Let's go ahead and just go grab this. All right, so it's under the FusionAuth example 5-minute guide, which is perfect. I will go ahead and pull that down. And we just had, okay, so to get the project started, clone the project and navigate to the directory. All right, so while you were in ads, I went ahead and cloned this project in, and I also removed the .git folder in the project. Since I'm inside of a .git at the root of it, I don't really care about having like a sub git module. I don't want to have to deal with that. So this is just now, it's a thing. We'll have to deal with it. It means I can't like update this if like the upstream ever updates. I can't really handle that anymore, but I'm okay with that. Okay, so what do we want to do? We are seeded into the FusionAuth example 5-minute guide. So we can see this here. We can MVM use to make sure we have version 18 of Node. Here's an example env file, which includes some configuration you'll need to change. Okay, right. So we have that client ID and the client secret in here. Let's go ahead and, now there's no .env already, right? Yeah. And so if we take a look at you, it wants us to put the client ID and client secret of the application. So I'm betting that it's going to start asking us to go into FusionAuth here, find the application. Here's testing, and we want the client ID, and that is here. It looks like a UUID. And then client secret. Okay, so we paste those both in there. Oh, there was a .env example. Oh yeah, there it is, which is exactly what we have there. So I don't need to worry about it. Okay. Yeah, in fact, they just had me copy that over. So that would have, if I had read a little bit more, we would have gotten there. Edit the .env file and update the client ID and client secret values. Set them to the client ID and the client secret you noted when examining the application configuration in a previous step. If you are not running locally, change the base URL to the correct value. So this would be the base URL of, yeah, because 9011 is where we have FusionAuth running, right? So this is where we'd have to say like, hey, this is where you go to find FusionAuth. That's all the changes you need to make to the .env file. Next, here's the package.json file, which includes all the components you'll need, which, I mean, this already has everything in here, so we don't really need to worry too much about it. If you're not familiar with Node.js, this is basically just a document file that tells Node what packages to install when we run it, where to find things, and just like, you know, how to do stuff. That's basically all it really is. It's very similar to a cargo.toml if you're only familiar with Rust. Install the required packages, use npm using npm install. So we've already made sure that we are running the right version of Node, so we can just do npm install. This application is almost ready to run, but let's look at some code first. Here's the heart of the application, the main express router. Okay, so this is the Node.js complete express router, and I don't really necessarily think there's too much that we have to really care about here. We do notice that they are grabbing out, so FusionAuth has their own npm library. This is probably from their SDK, which is a TypeScript client, so that's good to know. We have they're grabbing the client ID and the client secret from environment variables, and the base URL for the FusionAuth base URL. They're creating a new client from the FusionAuth client. Okay, so from the SDK. Interesting. No API key needed. So I'm guessing that I could eventually set up an API key required for FusionAuth, and it's going to use, they're grabbing in PKCE challenge. I'm not familiar with that package. And let's see, then they're going to create the logout route, which calls destroy in the session. Okay. Then they have, get the home page, and the home page creates a state. Okay, they're going to use PKCE to generate a challenge. So this is all standard OAuth stuff. They're using sessions here for that. They're creating a challenge, and then they're rendering. Okay, and so this is where the pug stuff comes in. So this is a good old-fashioned back-end rendered application here. So they're going to render an index file and pass it this data, which is going to be put into the DOM in some way. Nope. Yep. There. Here's that OAuth redirect that is going to redirect us back to, and they're going to they're going to get some stuff from the query. So they're going to get that state. They're going to make sure that the state is exactly the same as what it was previously. Now they're using session here, which this actually won't work if we've scaled this application horizontally, because what if it gets a different session or a different version, different running instance? That might not match. So in that case, we'd need to store this instead of the session in some place like Redis or somewhere around there. Okay, so we're doing all the fun things here. This is all still part of router get OAuth redirect. It does all the fun OAuth stuff, grabs the user information, retrieve the user using a jot, and exports that. So that's just the router itself. Store the user object in the session. There is a route that corresponds to the URL you configured in the FusionAuth admin user interface above. This is critical functionality, so let's take a closer look at this. So, so we're going to go through what this really is. Here's the complete code for exchanging the token, retrieving the user data, storing it in the session, and redirecting the user. If we're going to be doing this eventually in like Axum, then we would need to do all of the stuff manually as well. But that's, let's see. They have some fun stuff that's happening for us behind the scenes. We might get some other third-party libraries that will help us doing it, but we might have to just do it all manually too. I'm not sure. This route retrieves the code parameter from the request and exchanges it for an access token. This access token can be used for a variety of purposes, but in this tutorial, it is used to retrieve user data from FusionAuth. Once you have the user object, it is stored in a server-side session, so it can be used in other parts of the application. This includes a view where it is used to greet the user. There are other options for storing this user object, but for this tutorial, this will work just fine. If you want to learn more, such as other patterns for storing the token, please check out these articles about login workflows. And this goes to the FusionAuth domain, so they have the articles hosted themselves. The final thing this code does is redirect the authorized user back to the homepage. There, they'll be greeted by name, as you'll see below. Test the application. Okay, so now we can go ahead and run npm start to get everything going. And if I remember correctly, this is all on localhost 3000. There we go. Okay, so we have our FusionAuth example. Welcome to FusionAuth example. We click our login. So here's their login page. Not super zoomed in. I mean, it looks very similar to what Auth0 gives us when it's not sort of branded. And it grabs, my guess is it's grabbing this from the languages that I had set up for this user, which that's nice. Okay, email. What was it? It was accounts. And my amazing password. Go ahead and keep me signed in. And hello, Brooks. Okay. I mean, fairly basic, fairly simple, exactly what you would expect from authentication, but hey, not bad. And I also assume that we can see that this happened, right? So if we go back to our dashboard, we have one total log. Oh, it doesn't see the login. I wonder if it's because it's this user. Can I see last login was right now, so that makes sense. So it knows that this logged in. Interesting. Okay, I wonder if it's only counting for non-FusionAuth accounts. Now, if I log out and try to log back in again, okay, so this one, there's nothing to like switch over and say like, hey, also let me create the account right here, which I bet there's a way for me to configure that and change it. Okay, so open localhost 3000 in an incognito browser, or like me, I just opened up in, actually it just worked, didn't it? Huh, wonder why that was. You'll need to use an incognito browser because otherwise FusionAuth won't prompt you to log in, which it did for us. So that was interesting. Progress bar for log out, I can safely say that's first. Yeah, that was also a little bit interesting, wasn't it? Also, hello stacking. How are you doing today? Like there's no way that log out is taking more than like a couple milliseconds. But sometimes people like the bars because it makes them feel that something is happening. You'll need to use, okay, so we do that. FusionAuth supports single sign-on and will automatically redirect you to the application if you are already logged in with the FusionAuth server. Because I am the same person, right? So I guess if we come back to here, if I hit refresh, oh yeah, because I'm logged out of FusionAuth too. So okay, so I'm logged into you, hit refresh, go to login, and yeah, straight to here. So if I'm logged into one application that uses FusionAuth and then I come into a completely different application, even though it's a different host server, not a different domain, but a different what's the thing with what's it called in cores? It's like the combination of everything. I forget what it's called, but because it's different, like port, it's going to be considered like a very different thing altogether. So it gets its own cookies, it gets its own everything else. But I go to localhost 9011 as part of the login. It sees, hey, you're already logged in, and so therefore it sends me back over to here as a logged in user, which is nice. Or at least it can be nice if that's what you want. Okay, click the login link. It takes us to the page. We did that. From here, you can log in with the account that you use to access the admin interface, the admin user interface above. If you log in with a valid account that is registered for the application, you can arrive at the homepage but are greeted by name. In a real application, there'd be a lot more than a hello message, but this is a building block. You've successfully authenticated and stored user data in the Express session. From here, you can add other pages, hide or display information based on attributes of the user, and more. If, on the other hand, you log in with an account that exists in FusionAuth but is not registered for the application, you'll end up at an error page. Okay, so if we didn't allow that user to be registered for this application, which it doesn't let me register right here, which is, I don't know how I feel about that. This error message and overall page look and feel can be modified via a custom FusionAuth theme. Okay, Actually, that's really nice because I can change it and maybe I can make it so they can just register straight from here. Log out. Of course, for every login, there should be a corresponding log out. Log out by clicking on the log out link. This will log you out of both FusionAuth and the application. Here's the pug code which builds a link to the user logout, which is not all that shocking, right? It's just, okay, so go to the FusionAuth URL, which is localhost 9011, Auth0 logout, client ID equals, and then we have the client ID, and then you click on that, right? When you visit this link, you're sent to FusionAuth where the FusionAuth session is destroyed, and then to the application's logout URL. This URL was configured when you set up the application in FusionAuth and has the value of, logout. That route destroys the local session, logging you out from the Node.js application, and then sending you back to the home page. And then this actually just destroys it in the our application too. And now you're logged out. Scott, hello. How are you doing today? Did I get a chance to meet with Talk a bit about Anathema? I did not. However, I was able to go back and forth with Talk a little bit on Discord yesterday. We did chat a little bit about potentially doing a pairing stream on it. So maybe next time that I work on our Anathema code, we'll be able to do a little bit of pairing, or eventually we'll be able to do that. Summing up, now you've now taken an application and layered on authentication with FusionAuth. A user who is registered for the application can log in, view private data, and log out. Congrats, here are typical next steps. Okay, so then there's just a bunch of stuff that we can do from there. But okay, that's the 5-minute guide. Excellent. So getting started with it, seems pretty simple. We can answer that. Like the very basics of getting started is perfectly fine. So how easy to get started? I would say probably more than 5 minutes. So more than 5 minutes, but still very simple. Now, this drops us in and gives us a setup guide here for creating an application. Now, what's interesting is that we have an application created for this and it's showing 0%. So I'm wondering about this. Let's go ahead and click on setup and see how it feels. So it wants us to create an application through here. DLA code. You not recommend using FusionAuth? Why is that? Why do you not recommend it? That's a link, but it just takes me back here. That's interesting. So another test. Can I use spaces? Oh, I can skip. Okay, cool. So I can skip. Create an API key. An API key allows you to access FusionAuth without using the admin UI and may be helpful if the admin user is unable to log in. If you want a shorter API key for development, you may modify. Oh, I can literally just say, that's my API key. That seems great. But more importantly, if I want to script this for local development or maybe using this in a Docker instance, that'd be good. Let's see, you already use it for your project. The API is not really code SDK. It's better to build your own microservice. Not really code? I'm not really sure I understand. Like, are you suggesting that that we would use, like, instead of using like FusionAuth, you would want to just build your own entire authentication system yourself, which I don't recommend for production level stuff. Unless you have like a team dedicated to security, I would highly recommend using a managed service for that. So yeah, I'm not really believing on using like self-managed, unless it's like an application that you're not going to have any kind of like PII data or anything else that you're going to worry like is, I guess, like, unless if people aren't really paying for the services, then it's not really that big of a deal, right? But if it's starting to become like a more real business type thing, I do recommend using some kind of managed authentication system. And if we look at our choices out there, we have Auth0, we have Okta, we have what is AWS has, like, see something? I forget what that's called. That's just your opinion from your personal experience with FusionAuth. Interesting. So is it like more of once you get further into it, you find you're running into troubles? Are you is there any comparisons to other managed services that you're running into, like with like compared to like Auth0, for example? You would recommend a managed system even if people aren't paying. Security holes hurt everyone regardless of whether they pay. That's also very true. Definitely. I mean, even if people aren't paying, you really don't want to take the risk of exposing their passwords. You simply can't assume they won't reuse passwords. Both extremely good and valid points. So yeah, I will amend my statement. use a managed authentication service unless it's just a toy application or only for yourself. Okay, so now once I create an API key, if I like do this, okay, yeah, I can click back on this again and it's like regenerates a new API key for me. So there we go. Here's a potential API key. Okay, save and continue. You recommend you build your own microservice to get full control. I guess, so, oh, I've been had ads running for a while. I guess like one question here for, I don't really agree with like we needing full control for something like this. Mostly because if we take a look at like the risk and reward and also the price, the cost, right? Because if we are using a managed service, you're outsourcing essentially a bunch of things you need to support and build now to some other third party, right? In this case, it would be FusionAuth. It could be Auth0. It could be Cognito is the one for AWS. Any of those, right? And in doing so, yes, Nick Maffei, you're also now taking full competence and responsibility for that. And that is one sort of like issue, right? Like that's already right there is like, is this something you really want to focus your time on? The other one is now a business thing called, or actually it's an economics thing, which is the, now my brain is really, I just lost the words for it. It's the thing where what are we not working on? Because like if you're going to spend time working on authentication, that means you're not spending time working on your app, right? Like the actual business logic. And if we think about things in terms of cost centers or profit centers, which is another business term thing. So a cost center is something that your users do not want to pay you for. It's just something that like they don't really care about. They just want it to work, right? Authentication would be considered a cost center. It's not something they want to pay you for. They just want you to have it though. And so in that case, we should spend as little amount of time and money on the cost centers and as much as possible on the profit centers, the things that only we can do, features, right? So if you can outsource this to a third party, which in this case, FusionAuth, that's so much better. And if you can self-host this, put it in your own database, have complete control over it, or at least as much control over it as you possibly can, that's the best middle ground, right? You still spend a little bit of time, which is money, on hosting it, but at least you don't spend 100% of the time on now supporting it from a programming point of view. Those are my opinions and thoughts. Configure an email server. Configure the email server in order to complete a password reset and other email-based workflows. You will need to obtain your email configuration from your support team or from your email service provider. And then we can click a send test message. Okay, so this won't be able to send messages unless we configure this in. So I don't have an email service running locally. I would need to set one up. I do have actually SendGrid set up. So I could use them, but I don't want to expose any of my keys or anything else like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip this. Activate license. Activating your license gives you access to everything you purchased. So we don't have a license key because we're using the community version. And now we know how we can get, now we know how you can get those like paid versions on the self-hosted, right? Is like through that license that you purchase and you activate it there. Use the following settings to get your application working with FusionAuth to help you get started. Okay, so the quick start guides, which you already did. And then we have, interesting, they start us on generic, which is nice. And then we have Ruby and Rails, Python, React. But I believe they have SDKs for way more than just these. Okay, let's go ahead and complete. And we're good to go. Let's walk through this and see what we've got here. So obviously we took a look at users before and creating new users. They have an advanced search, which is nice. Applications. Okay, so the applications that we made. Now, if we want to create a new type of application, what kind of stuff do we have in here? I'm not going to worry about theme right now. So under OAuth, it already generated the client secret, but here's where we can regenerate it to. In fact, can I come back here and we'll go edit? Yeah, I can regenerate the client secret. I can't regenerate the client ID. Once that's set, that's set. So that's good to know. Debug enabled. Enable debug to create an event log to assist you in debugging integrations. Okay, that's nice. We have those redirects. Okay, logout behavior is when sets are redirect only, the logout request will only end your SSO session and redirect. When set to all applications, the logout request will end your SSO session, so single sign-on, making a GET request to each application and tenant logout URL if defined. Oh, interesting. Okay, so remember how if we log in to FusionAuth itself and then also our application, it would automatically log us in, and then if we logged out for all applications, it logs out to both. But we can also say it logs us out only of the thing that we were logged into. So I could log out of this example, but not log out of here. That's actually nice. Enabled grants. So authorization code and refresh token, those are good defaults, I think. Now, device would be machine to machine, right? And then password would be just literally send a username and password in and then get tokens back, this is the least secure. The fact that they have it though is nice. So we could potentially do like a demo or a test application and click on that for some kind of machine still be device for like maybe testing purposes. I've actually not used any real applications that would require password. Let's see, require registration. Okay, so basically, when enabled, user will be required to be registered before redirecting to the configured callback in the authorization code. Okay, so basically, if I'm not required, so if I don't require this, then the user could be any user in the system. It just doesn't need to be added to this specific application. That's interesting. User info populate lambda. Feature disabled, no lambda selected. Okay, to modify or augment the Auth0 user info response for this application, select the lambda to be invoked during the user info call. I'm betting we'll find that out down further. Okay, scopes. So unknown scopes, we're going to reject the entire OAuth workflow. So that way, if somebody's attempting to just like take on more. Relationship, first party, the application is the same owner as the authorization server, or third party, if we're being an application for somebody else to make something on. That's good to know. Scope handling, and then we have a bunch of scopes, so like address, email, phone, profile, and then we can turn those off too. Although I don't think I've ever myself gotten like addresses or even phone numbers, but it's good to know that I can add these in here. I wonder if I can add in custom scopes that would be visible here too. Oh, manage custom scopes for this application. Is there a separate, if I click on that, that just goes to manage scopes, home applications, manage scopes. Interesting. CleanSpeak. The CleanSpeak integration is not enabled. Okay, don't know what that is. I mean, oh, it's for a what is CleanSpeak? CleanSpeak API? CleanSpeak provides a number of APIs that allow you to integrate your application with CleanSpeak. Okay, that's great, but what are you? It's a platform for filtering and monitoring user-generated content. Integration with CleanSpeak is provided through use of APIs. Okay, so real-time chat filter, phone number, email, and URL filtering. Okay, so basically it's just making sure that things are on the up and up. They're good to go. Oh, that's nice. And it looks like that's available to us in Community Edition. Email. Okay, so we can have email templates set up here. And they have a bunch of email defaults already. That's nice. JOTs. Okay, this is the application-specific configuration for the JSON Web Token signing algorithm and related settings. This configuration is optional and may be left unconfigured. If no JOT configuration is provided for this application, the JOT signing algorithm and a related setting specific in the tenant configuration will be used to sign and verify tokens for this application. So basically, all applications by default use the same JOT everything. But I could just say, hey, this specific application gets its own JOT signing settings, which I guess is nice, right? Because if you're concerned about something being compromised, then this would basically limit the damage. Multi-factor. Okay, so MFA. So on login policy, we can say enabled, a challenge will be required during login when an eligible method is available, or required. A challenge will be required during login. A user will be required to configure 2FA if no available methods are available. Okay. Now, if I just do that and nothing else, I would go ahead and log in again. Oh, that just lets me log in. Okay. I feel like, oh, a license required. I have to have a license for this? Interesting. So we'd have to look into maybe how this works before we've got it. I guess it didn't save properly. So I'll just go back to that. Tea Kettle, hello. How are you doing today? We are exploring FusionAuth, which is a managed authentication service, but you can self-host it. So this FusionAuth is running in a Docker container locally on my system as opposed to in the cloud, which means that it's much easier for me to play around with these things and not be too worried about just exposing all the keys because I'm just going to kill it all later. Okay, verify registrations is interesting. It's just, hey, did you really mean to register for this application? That one I don't really think is that necessary to do. The self-service registration, though, seems a lot better. I like this more. Self-service registration will allow users to self-register using a FusionAuth login page. If the user does not yet exist, the user will be created and registered in one step. If a user already exists but is not yet registered, the user will be automatically prompted to register after successful authentication. And we can do basic or advanced. Oh, where I can set up different forms. I can do all the different things. Nice. Ooh, I can even configure whether or not we have a confirmed password or if it just works. So a licensed version will give you another binary blob with those features enabled. No, actually, interestingly enough, you would get the same binary blob in your Docker container or just as a self-install, but you can, where was it? It was somewhere in here in like maybe settings or system, you can put in a license for FusionAuth and that enables features for you. So you get the same one, which again, I like that being nice because that means that they didn't split the entire application into two different apps, one for paid users and one for non-paid users. It's the same application with the same core features. So if there's a bug in one of them, it's just going to be fixed in everybody's. Login type. Okay, so here's where we can say, are you going to use the email as the login like thing or the username? And as much as many people I know dislike using email, it has become the norm for a variety of reasons. And it will probably like I'll be continuing to use it too. Yeah, so it is some kind of key. Yeah. Registration fields. So we can say like, here, I want your birth date, I want your first name, your full name, yeah, I want your last name, give me your mobile phone, give me your preferred languages. Oh, that's it? Like I can't also ask for your social security number and like, your blood type and maybe like a DNA sequence. And then we could also say like, oh, wait a second. This will be fun. That actually, okay, I think that took. Yeah, okay, so we have self-registration set up. First name is now required. Admin registration, okay, so admin registration forms can be used to define the fields that are available to edit for a user from the edit registration page. Okay, so I would need to create these myself in order to use any of those. Even though it is self-hosted, does it still interact with their servers in some way? There is a good way for us to find out. I have turned off my internet. I have Wi-Fi enabled on this computer over here. So now this has no internet connection whatsoever. Let's see if I can self-register a user now here. So I'm gonna log in. I want to just say this is testing at that, password, do that, go ahead and, okay, so this user doesn't exist, submit, invalid. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and create an account. Go ahead and register. Okay. All right. So it didn't actually have that big of a problem. So it feels like, I'm as the wrong type of user now. I have to log out because I'm using the same browser for this. In registration, I'm requiring first name, but because I don't have it enabled, it's not actually enforcing the first name. So it's a bug that I can switch this on, but it's not a bug in the fact that it actually does the right thing, which is nice. So is it interacting with their servers? The only way for us to know for absolute certain would be to run through everything and be checking the network traffic to FusionAuth's domain, right? Like to make sure that it's not sending anything out there. That being said, I've now turned off internet for this system, and it's not yelling at me, so it's not saying like, "Hey, you can't do this." So I want to say that like as long as you can, if you feel like you can trust them when they say it doesn't require their service and it's like fully self-hosted, then it's fully self-hosted. Okay, SAML stuff. Nice. Okay, so you can actually set up SAML and do the entire thing with maybe your, what is it? This is like the federated login stuff, right? I don't have one. Security. The login API settings allow you to control access to the login API and limit the capability for users in this application. This configuration will not affect authentication via OAuth grants. Okay, so this is just for directly logging in to the application itself. Require an API key. Allow users to request login using a link sent via email. Enabling this feature will cause a button to be displayed on the FusionAuth login form and allow you to utilize the passwordless login API, which is nice. I do like that. I don't have any email server set up for this, so we can't test it and play around with it now, but that would be nice to play around with. Interesting. I don't know much about networking, but would it be a firewall that you can set up to block any addresses it may or may not be contacting? Yes, you can definitely do that. Now, could they potentially try to be really tricky and go to other domains? Absolutely. Like that's the problem with a lot of those type of things. Like if they wanted to and they wanted to trick you with it, they probably could. And it would be hard to like fully block it, but you could definitely block anything going to IP addresses that are publicly owned by FusionAuth, like any of their servers. Now, if it sends something to like AWS or DigitalOcean or something like that, that might be a little bit more difficult because what if that's like your application? It makes it a little bit harder, right? If they distributed a binary to you, there's only a finite set of different server addresses they could preset. That's also very true, right? Although, yeah, that's very true, right? Because like they can't even go out to download another set of those addresses without you noticing that they're going out to internet. And if you just turn off the internet for everything and like the only internet that it has access to is your own systems, then yeah, you're safe, or as maybe safe as you could potentially be from that type of attack. Authentication tokens allow users to optionally authenticate using an application-specific token in place of their password. This should only be used when the security requirements are low, and the user's normal password is not a good option for authentication. For example, if a password needs to be stored in an external configuration and the exposure risk is low, a token be used in place of the user's password. This token may only be used for authorization for this application. This is nice. I actually like them explaining this out so specifically here. That way, anybody who's like going to configure this knows exactly what this means at this point and then doesn't click on this. Now, if I do click on that, okay, it's just enabled or default. Basically, now multiple things can be used as the password. Okay, let's see. Advanced, last section. External identifier durations. The primary configuration for these identifiers is found in tenant configuration under the Advanced tab. When a value is defined, it will override the tenant configuration. The current tenant configuration value is displayed on a placeholder text. So, okay, so it trusts two-factor for 30 days. So every 30 days, you need to redo two-factor if you have that configured. And it seems like that's the only thing that we're really worried about in Advanced right now. Never been through that thought exercise before in his context, so was just interested. Anyway, is there a lack of suitable authentication libraries that warrant using this? This wouldn't really replace a authentication library per se, right? Because like you would still need a authentication library on your backend or your front end to integrate with this. However, FusionAuth is replacing your managed service. So if you're using something like Auth0, then this replaces that. So you don't need to pay Auth0. You don't need to rely upon a third-party source that's like online only. You could run the entire service separately on your own system offline, for example. You could even spin it up in CI/CD if you want to have the entire application, including authentication locally, so you can test it all, which to me that is the most exciting part about this, not having to go out to internet. But you'll probably still need, you either need to use their SDK in your, as the library, as the authentication library, or just use one off the shelf. I don't really remember what the library of choice is for, what is it for, like Express? Was it like Passport? That was one that was really popular a long time ago. Is it still being used? All right, groups. So we can create a bunch of different groups. What happens if we do try to create one? What can we add into this? So we have group. This is test group. Application roles. Ooh, okay. So we can give it a bunch of roles. These are, I don't have any other roles available, so these would just be FusionAuth roles. But, interesting. This means that I could create multiple people that can log into FusionAuth itself, and then it can only do certain things because I've only given them the roles for it. That's nice. So we have this test group that nobody's a member of. Tenants. We have the default tenant, and now I doubt they're going to create multiple databases and keep it separated on that level. So they must be doing something with, I'm curious, it must be like single database, multiple tenants in that way. That's my guess. But I've never actually worked in a multi-tenant environment before, like on apps. So I'm not really 100% sure what that would look like. Yeah, that's what you value too. I just thought that some library for like a Rust crate could be used to do the same thing, because ultimately that's all this thing is anyways. Oh yeah. So I asked them that. So when I met with their CTO at one of their CTO lunches, I asked about their SDKs of what they have available, and then I mentioned that I'm using a lot of Rust. And they said that they do not have an SDK for Rust right now. They're not sure if they're going to have one anytime soon because, let's be honest, the Rust is not really in demand for a lot of these things, right? If they're going to spend money creating an SDK, it's probably going to be on all the other major languages and frameworks like React, and Node.js and Python and Java, C#. Like there's a whole bunch of those they're going to do before they get to Rust. Eventually they might get to it though, especially if there's demand. So if a bunch of people reach out to them and say, hey, we would absolutely use and love a Rust SDK, that could change, right? However, the CTO also said that they're written as an API first system. So everything that they do is based upon API calls. And that's the thing that they want to make sure is working really well to begin with. And then they work on their SDKs secondly after that. So the experience for the APIs should be hopefully pretty good. Oh, you were talking about just this software itself. Okay, that makes sense. Then in that case, never mind. All right, I'm not going to worry about tenants. Reactor. Start the reactor. FusionAuth reactor has not been activated. To purchase, okay, so this is this is where you were talking about how to like get extra features, right? We just throw in a license key and then it adds it in there. Oh, and you can even get an air gap license. Now this is nice. So you can have an air gap license for use without internet access. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so FusionAuth is an authentication platform service. So think of it like a managed authentication, which does not just, authentication, but authorization too, using groups and roles. You can have its multi-tenant configured. You can do SAML. You can use MFA. You can have email authentication, emails going out to all the users after they log in. You can do email verification or validation. And it feels like a lot of the same things you could do with, let's say, Auth0. So yeah, like I think the database plus cryptography stuff plus all the things you need for Auth, with the ability to use your own database if you wanted to. Okay, so I don't, we're not going to activate that. Customizations. Okay, so here's where we can say, okay, we have email templates, and they actually have, we would never be able to get the breached password notification because that is one of those advanced features that we don't get in the community edition. But like in email verification form, we can take a look at that. And this is what it looks like. And we can just change it ourselves, which I don't know if I like that default one, but it's something we can play around with. Is that stuff all not ultimately just key pair cryptography? Don't know much about auth. Maybe that aspect includes some kind of additional IP metadata logging. Yeah, and they say they also have like attack. Like if somebody is trying to like attack your system and maybe like do too many logins at once, or bad logins, bogus logins, like they would detect that and do something about it. That's like a good part of that as well. But yes, like at the ultimate, or I should wait until the ads are done. Okay, welcome back. Sorry about that, Tea Kettle. So anyways, you were saying, is this stuff all not just ultimately key pair cryptography stuff, right? Where we're just hashing a password, storing that into a database, and doing everything else, right? Well, yes and no, right? Like ultimately when you're storing the password, hopefully we're not just storing the actual password in an encrypted sense. It's in a cryptographically secure hashed sense, as in we can't extract it from the hash. Instead, all we can do is just take another password, hash it with the same way, and then compare the hashes together. They absolutely should be doing that. And then we could do that ourselves too, right? Now, add into that though, that you can also have roles. You can have groups. You can have, how do you want to handle if a user forgot their password and they want to reset that through, an email or something else, MFA, all those things we could do and are not like necessarily super hard to do, but it's not necessarily something that I think that we should be doing when we're writing our apps. It's far too easy to sort of screw up and make things less secure. And if we have bugs in there, that could be pretty bad. It's my recommendation that we just have a managed service do that all for us, because they should be employing people that their job is just only focus on the authentication part. Just make sure that it's secure, and that's all I really care about. And as long as they're doing that, I think that's perfectly fine. Now, the negative for it is that most of those are going to be SaaS services, right? Like Auth0. And you can't really use those offline. And that's where FusionAuth gets pretty interesting, is the fact that it's potentially doing this in where we can do this offline, because we could just host it locally. You just don't like that it's proprietary. Yeah, and there are probably some, it's not probably, there are definitely open source authentication, sort of managed systems that are managed by an open source community. So those are absolutely available and can be used. I don't know why I sort of shy away from those, but I don't know why. I think mostly because they're not popular enough. And I don't know if most companies, if I taught some students how to use those, I don't know, like these have like a bigger presence and might be a little bit more sort of like interesting to like an employer if they're looking at like, oh, you know how to do authentication. Oh, it's with FusionAuth. I've seen that in documentation from many other servers around. We know what that is. Where if it's like a little bit lesser known open source, but that's a business choice of mine. That has nothing to do with whether or not they're secure or not. So yeah, I don't know. I do like the fact that you can use your own database. Like you can bring your own Postgres database and attach it to FusionAuth, and they're using your database as opposed to a database in a container of their choice. I think that is really good. I like that a lot. Okay, so form fields, this is where we can add in all that extra stuff. So if I wanted to do, like we can say, okay, we need a DNA sequence for everybody. It is, I guess, field. Select predefined field or select custom user or registration to define a new path. This key is the path to the value in user. So I'd probably do custom user data, like DNA. So if like, hey, you need to give us your DNA sequence for this. Form control. This type of form control cannot be modified. Okay, so, oh yeah. What type is it? Is it text, password, checkbox? Okay. Yeah, so this would be like a text area because you have to, DNA sequences are long, right? It's a string. Sure, it's required. No, you don't have to confirm it. Oh, I can do a regular expression to validate it. Nice, so I can put that in here myself. Cool, so if I do this DNA sequence, if we go back up to applications, and we're gonna go back to to testing, registration, self-service. Now it doesn't show up in the registration fields here. Is there some place where I can add that in? I'm not sure where I would put that. We could probably find that now in the user somewhere in here. Yes, there's no user data in here. So somewhere I could probably find that and add that in there. I wonder if it would have to be the different form that I would use. And like we have to go in and update not just the form fields, but the forms. Default admin user provided by default admin. Okay, self-service here. Add field, DNA sequence, add you, required yes. Okay, save you. And now let's see, we're in developer edition. Let's go here. Okay, give me a login, create an account. Oh, they don't have, okay, so this is not that form that I thought about. So it just has email and password. So I need to find which form this is and use it. Oh, presumably all you really want is a hash of our DNA? No. I want to be able to look through their DNA. I need more than a hash, right? Like a hash would be one direction. I need like, it can be encrypted as long as I have the key, right? I need to like own them. Okay, so if I create a new form, so this would be self-registration type, form steps, add, I want, here, we know that this is like really important because before we even get your username, we're gonna do, not user, email, password. Okay, so we get those three things. Is there like a submit or is that, no, that's it. So, oh, multiple pages that we can do. Oh, interesting. Okay, fun. So if I save you, this one is called, oh, I can't see the name of the form that I created here. That's, oh, self-registration. So back up to applications, testing, registration. Okay, so user self-service, default user self-service provided by FusionAuth. Oh, I was hoping that would allow me to say which one to use. Oh, that's too bad. So if I do that, oh, license required. So that's a paid service. No, they have it available so I can use it. I just can't change the form. I'm not sure about that. There's probably more that I can deal with in their documentation to learn about how this would work. Okay, the business perspective you're not familiar with, so you guess this is a nice compromise in the space of how businesses and managers think, because I guess they trust things they recognize. Definitely. Many companies will trust things that they recognize or they see all over the place or has a presence somewhere else, right? And that is something like if your application that you're building is for and you're not using it to sort of like try to get a job or do something else with that, who cares, right? It doesn't matter as long as it does the job. If you're a student or you're trying to like use this as a portfolio piece, then it sort of actually matters which technology you use. You want to use ones that are impressive, something that's going to cause somebody to go like, ooh, okay, I can now imagine you working for us because you're using something that I recognize and it is in the same level as something else we're using. Think of the leak risks. I mean, come on. If I'm asking for their DNA, do I really care about the leak risks at that point? Shandu, hello. How are you doing today? All right, so that's something to maybe do some exploration later, which is, can we customize the self-registration to ask for custom data fields? And the answer is not like the first try that I did. No, but that doesn't mean we can't do it. It just means that my first try didn't work. Lambdas. Okay, now this is interesting. So there are 11 lambdas here. Now, if I wanted to create a lambda, oh, it's literally like a lambda function, but it runs in here. Okay, so it type Apple reconcile using the ID token returned from Apple reconcile the user in user registration. So this is, oh, so if I'm like getting like a user from an Apple user, interesting. They have a bunch of default ones in here. A jot populate where I can then add in information to the jot. Oh, interesting. Okay, so this is good. This means that it's not actually like a Lambda function, like an AWS Lambda function. It's more like a Lambda in the original sense, an anonymous function that we're able to insert as like middleware, I'm guessing, anywhere in the process, which is nice. And then debug enabled. Enable debug to create an event log for any console debug statements in your Lambda. So which means I can turn this off and then console log just won't do anything unless this is on. Oh, that's nice too. Do hashing algorithms take a key or something so that hashes are unique per user? So the same algorithm, but different results because of the key. Let's see. Hashing algorithms take a salt and is it a key? I forget now. Let's see. What's a common hash? Let's see. What's one that I've used before a lot? There is. I forget the name of the one that I used the most. Let's see. npm maybe like hash. You could just add the username to the content of the hash. Absolutely. Oh yeah, I have no internet. That would definitely make it harder to search. Oh, bcrypt. Yeah. Just take a look at bcrypt and see what it needs. So we have salt rounds. This is what you're going to hash. Yeah, so it basically takes in that. It takes in the salt and then the rounds. And then it's going to put all that stuff into the resulting hash. Is SHA a hasher? Yes, it is. And depending upon which SHA you're using, it's either completely broken, partially broken, or completely safe, which is fun. MD5 is also a hasher, but that is completely broken. Do not use it. And then some systems and people will hash the hash, right? Like there'll be a double hash. And I've never talked to a security person to find out whether or not that's actually adding to security or if it's just unnecessarily adding time to everything. It might be good. It might be better. It might not be any better. I don't know. I don't know how FusionAuth does things behind the scenes. Something that I do like is about Auth0 is that they have a lot of white papers. They have a lot of documentation about how their system works behind the scenes, which is nice. Okay, so we can put a Lambda function in here. We can jot populate, which is nice for like user ID type stuff. They have a Twitch reconcile. So if I could use Twitch and you use Google for like people to log in with their Google username and their Twitch username, which is good to know. So if I wanted to switch over and use this instead of Auth0, I could. And then user info populate. Using a user registration parameters along with a jot provided, okay, so to give more user information, which is nice. Okay, so let's say I do just a jot populate. We do test jot. We're going to debug enable this. And this is just populate your jot here. Now they don't have much here for like how to actually populate the jot. Do they have autocomplete? So if I try to like jot, no, they don't. So we can do hello world, and then let's just put in, what is this? This is test jot. So we can see that this is happening. Okay, so good to know. Oh, you still don't understand what the salting stuff is. So the salting stuff is a randomization inside of your hash. So if you don't have a salt, the hash is actually not nearly as secure as it would be if you're using the salt. And the salt, I guess like a non-super like technical way of putting it is slowing the process down. It's making sure, to be continued. All right, welcome back. Okay, so anyways, back to salts. So salts slow the entire process down. So let's say you have maybe like 10 rounds of salt, and then you want to hash a password. It doesn't really matter how long the password is. If you have like 10 rounds of salt, it will take, I don't know, like less than a second in order to hash it. So you're going to get ads because you're watching via Streamlink. Oh, interesting. I didn't realize that Streamlink, you could watch via that. That's cool. Okay, so let's see if, can I go to bcrypt site? Do they have a list? Yeah, here it is. Okay, so the salt itself is what is really like slowing this down here, right? So if we do salt rounds of, is that right? Am I doing that? Am I saying that right? Yeah, salt rounds. So it's number of rounds that we go through the salt. So, oh, you're also right about that, Nick. If you use the same password everywhere, the encrypted versions of the password. So I'm not going to use the word encrypted. The hashed output of the same password with different salts is going to be different because the salt is sort of added in there, which is really good, right? That's what you want. That's what we want to see. On top of that, it also slows things down. So if you have 10 rounds of salt, you're going to be able to do 10 hashes per second, right? So what is that, like 0.1 or so? Less than 0.1 because it's 60 seconds. We're in base 60. However, if you just go up and you just double that to, somewhere between 15 and 25 salt rounds, now you're going anywhere between 3 seconds per hash to 1 hour per hash. And of course, you can go all the way up to 31 salt rounds, which is 2 to 3 days per hash. And the reason why you want to do that is less of for screwing with your users and like slowing them down. But if somebody gets access to your database, you want to give your users time to reset all the passwords before a hacker is able to brute force and figure out what the passwords really are. And they can only do that, hopefully, through taking a potential password and then hashing it with the same method that that we used when we're saving the password to the database. And if we're using like 15 rounds of salt, they can only do 3 of these per second, which obviously is now going to make it a really long time for them to guess it, because they're probably going to have to go through thousands or millions of potential passwords to get that. So you just want to make it per user? No, we want to make it expensive to break the passwords. What I'm wondering is, how does the server know how to generate the same hash? Does it save the salt or something? Yes, the salt is actually inside the hash, so you can actually look at it. In fact, is there like a bcrypt example hash with salt? It's a hey node Auth0. Is there like a bcrypt.com or maybe we can use runkit for this? Okay, so if I use runkit for you, we can say like const our salt rounds equals, let's do 10. If I want my password to be, there's our lovely password. You can't say that it's bad at all. It's perfect. Okay, we got that. I can now generate a salt on some. I can do it all together. So auto generate salt and a hash, right? So I just want, and then we're gonna get a bcrypt through here. So we're gonna do a bcrypt hash. So my plain text password. So we're gonna throw in the password, the salt rounds, and then we're gonna have a new function with an error and a hash in it, and we can console.log the hash. Okay, so if we run this, cannot find module. Oh, bcrypt lib node. Oh, they're using some stuff in here that, okay, so this doesn't actually work on their playground. Oh, that's too bad. That would have been really cool. Well, that's not gonna worry about that. Yeah, no, so the salt is inside of the password. So what you're gonna get is you're gonna get something like whatever that, like this is gonna be an example hash. It's gonna look a lot better and different than this, but it's basically gonna be like you have the hash, you have the salt, and you have the number of rounds that it was, all the information you need to create another hash from it is inside of this one string. And that's perfectly fine. That's okay, because you can't undo it. Mathematically speaking, you shouldn't be able to undo it. When we say that you have a broken hash, it's because you can undo it, and somebody has figured out how to undo it, and that's why you don't use MD5 anymore, because somebody has figured out how to take a hash and turn it into the original value. Not that big of a deal. Just use one that's not broken. And then if we have something that has like 10, it's like, okay, well, that's 10 rounds of the hash or whatever, and that all comes together. And that's where these timing things come in. Because if you can do 40 of these in 1 second on one process, then it's not going to take you very long to be able to take like just a million or so potential passwords, turn them into hashes using the same method, and then compare those hashes together. That's all you're really doing with that. And that's what we're the security for it. And if you have that information, but you're doing like 15 rounds, you can only do 3 per second per process, which is going to slow an attacker down quite significantly, potentially giving you days before they've broken the password or figured it out. And it's not because they've reversed the hash and got the password out of it. It's because they just guessed the password, hashed the guess password, and compared them together and says, now we know what that is. Yeah, Skimmis is maybe a better way of putting it than my entire long method. Yeah, and T-Kettle, if you want to chat more about it, or I'd be happy to, like, if you have more questions about it, feel free to throw those into Discord. And if we get enough, maybe I'll do like an entire video or something where we just talk about hashing and how that works, at least from a non-security researcher's point of view. Because obviously I'm not a security person. I am I have some sysadmin skills and some development skills. So from like that point of view. Okay, continuing on with this, what have we got? So we have our API keys. Something that's interesting with the API keys is that you can set it up for which tenant to use. So if you want to be multi-tenant, you can have an API key for each tenant. This one API key that I created previously is for all of them. So it's a dangerous API key. Connectors. Oh, so we can add an LDAP connector or a generic connector. Interesting. I don't have LDAP system anywhere, so I'm not going to play around with that. Consents. Oh, for like copy email. Okay, so like, do you consent to these type of things? So we can actually see, yeah, are you 13 or older? So I can actually like make them send emails to say like, hey, are you doing like this specific, are you like this type of person? If you don't consent to it, then I know that, and I don't give you certain access to the applications. That's good to know. Identity providers. So we could add in, for example, I am just trying to scroll down on it. That is a bug. Oh, even trying to like go to it directly on here, I can't. Oh, weird. What did they do? Huh. I guess if I zoom out enough, I don't have to scroll down on it, but that feels, oh, wait, I can scroll down now? Oh, now I can't again. Huh, if I zoom in enough, I can scroll down. If I don't zoom in enough, I can't. That's a weird bug. But okay, so if we add in Twitch, okay, so if I have an application on Twitch, I'd be able to add in client ID, client secret, log in with Twitch. I can get the scopes that I want. Link on the email. Oh, this is huge. So if I already have a user that created an account elsewhere, create the user if they do not exist. Otherwise, link the emails together. Link the actual users together, which I don't know if Auth0 does by default. I don't remember seeing that feature. I bet they have something to help out with that, but this is really nice. So I can just have like link the users together. And then a reconcile lambda. A lambda that is executed after the user authenticates with a third-party identity provider. This lambda can copy claims into FusionAuth. Okay, so if I want like information directly from Twitch in the user profile, I can get that through a lambda that I create here, or that I create up there, and then use from here. That's nice. So cool. And then I can enable this for the testing application. So if I save you and we go back to this application, yeah, that doesn't show this. So we need to figure out how to update this to use any of our custom stuff. Oh, it literally won't let me do this until I put in you. If I put in bogus information, will you care? Will you work? Okay, how about now? Oh, to use this identity provider, you must activate the reactor with a valid license key. Ooh, okay. So now if I want like for pricing, they have the entire iHost community plan, and they have a list of the features. Social login is available. So maybe I just need to create an account and get a license, like a community license through that. And in which case that would be talking to their servers. Okay, so that's good to know. I wonder, yeah, I'm hoping that I don't have to pay for that. I'll have to play around with this after, like offline, to see what this is. Integrations. Okay, so they have these two integrations, Kafka and CleanSpeak. We already talked about CleanSpeak. Kafka is for like a data warehousey thing, right? Like I don't think I've ever used Kafka before. Like I've heard of it, but I don't think I've never used it, so I don't really am familiar exactly what it does. IP access control. So I can come in and just block IP addresses. So if I'm being attacked by someone, I can just block them, which is nice. Keymaster. I can create new signing keys or import keys to use. Nice. Messengers. Oh, these are for Kafka and Twilio messengers. Okay. I wonder if that's for like I can do actually communication through text message. System. Okay, so cores. Now I shouldn't need to worry about this too much. Oh wait, is this for like people for like a front end browser to access this from not localhost 9011? Oh, that could be interesting. I don't want to create another manager for this. It's nice to know that I could create a new front end for it though. Okay, so this is all good to know. Okay, so these are logins, like what users' actions have done, and so logs, I guess. And then webhooks. Okay, so I can do a webhook like on create. Yeah. So like when certain things are done, I can then send a message out to a third-party service to do something. And it looks like I can do this for almost anything inside of FusionAuth, which is nice. So that's good to know. Reports. Okay, so I can look at login reports and everything else. I want to be careful about this because there might be some like IP address type things that would be leaked in here. And then system. So an audit log, an event log, login records. Like I bet there's some like private stuff in there. Oh, and I can reset everything. I'll select a kickstart file and then I can use that. Oh, okay. So this leads me to believe that I can probably configure everything about FusionAuth via this kickstart file. And then I don't have to like configure this multiple times. So if I want like a test version of FusionAuth for local development, then I can definitely use this. I like that. Okay, and then they should have documentation in here somewhere. So features, developers, documentation. Okay, so developer docs. So start building your web app. So web application. So all three of these would probably be using one of their SDKs, or we can just use their APIs. So more SDK stuff. Maybe? No, these are, oh, okay. Here's all of their SDKs then. So they have one for, let's see, Net, Express. Okay, they have an SDK for Rust with Actix. That's nice. And that's pretty much it. But not really anything else here is super helpful because I don't think anything is like, hey, let me connect without doing anything at all. Like without their, yeah, okay, let's go to APIs. Okay, API authentication. The FusionAuth APIs are primarily secured using API keys. A few APIs may use alternate credentials such as JOT, basic authentication. Okay, so we can do some stuff in here, but that's not necessarily what I want to do. I guess one thing that would be interesting if I come back to you. Okay, so we have our auth state. I don't know if any of these are the token. If we take a look at the login here. Oh yeah, everything is going to be backend rendered, isn't it? Oh yeah, everything is backend rendered. So I'm not going to see any of it here at all because it's all backend rendered. We have to, inside of here in the FusionAuth example, app.js. Oh, it's in their router, isn't it? Do I have a, it doesn't look like I have anything to help me run with this. I don't think I have TypeScript installed locally to actually use this. So I want to go to routes index. Okay, here's that OAuth redirect. So I get the state. We make sure that that's the same. Exchange the OAuth code for, okay, so we do that entire exchange thing. Now, if I wanted to log in, but I can't use their system, I would probably have to re-implement all this stuff for ourselves, which is what we did with Auth0. We did that entire thing where we had to re-implement what they were doing in their SDKs inside of Rust. And I used their Vue code, I believe, as an example of how to do that. So it shouldn't be that hard because all that stuff is open source, all the SDKs are public and you're able to just sort of like read through the code. As long as you can like understand what's going on, you can just recreate it in whatever language you want. Okay, and so here's, what am I doing here? I am getting this. This code stores the user in a server-side session. Okay. Retrieve user using the JOT. So I'm getting response access token. Okay. So, oh, I'm already console logging response access token. Okay. So that would be this. This would be the access token that we're getting back, which looks to me just like a bearer token, right? So I should be able to take this. And if I want to find like get user info, like retrieve a user, that doesn't seem to be right. Okay, user info? That the dark mode is really unhappy with this search. I mean, I want to use an API for it, but I'm not sure that that's the right API to use. Tea Kettle, thank you so much for stopping by and all the questions. I think they're helpful. So have a great rest of your Thursday. I'm not super happy with that design of these dropdowns, but again, that might be dark mode. If I turn that off, oh, wait, they already have a dark mode. Oh, that's so much better. Okay, so if I go to their APIs, is there something that I can get from like non-API users? I want to use that bearer token to get access to like a user info. And so users, retrieve the user. So get API user, I have to get the user ID, authentication. Okay, yeah, so I want to use the JOT authentication with the bearer token. And they're just using the authorization header. Okay, so authorization bearer that. Okay, that's easy enough. And so we can use a curl like this. So curl h authorization bearer, add in the bearer token, or we can just go to open up Rapid API and we'll use that. Remind me later. Oh, right. You don't let me make the interface bigger, do you? Okay, so request, I want to do a get. And then what would be the basics? So the basics would be HTTP localhost 9011. And then I think it was like what? /API user. So API user, and then I want the user ID, right? So if we could figure out who the user is, now we know the user. So in this testing user here, that's the user ID. Headers, we want to use, or I guess this is auth. So we're going to use, it's not a basic auth. I don't want to have to set everything up like this. We're just going to use headers, authorization. Oh, none. Okay, headers, authorization, bearer, paste that. Oh, nope, that's the wrong thing. Bearer, paste that in. Okay, so if I send this out, yeah, I get the full user. So we can take the bearer token that we get back and request this information, which I can't zoom in on, which is unfortunate. Can I change the font? I mean, not really. That didn't do anything. That's too bad. Okay, but I can see, let's see. I can do this with curl. So is it curl header? We want, oh, I have to do something like this, right? Authorization is that entire thing. I want to hit HTTP localhost 9011 API users, and then I go find that user ID. Oh, it's singular user. Empty reply from the server. I didn't do that right. Don't they have they have an example? It was like under authentication, they had like an example of using curl. So -h, do that entire thing, and then, oh, they put this into a quote. Okay. Oh, you don't provide curly braces and -h. Okay. Maybe that's my problem. What do they do? Oh yeah, you're right. It's just that. I don't know where I got the quote idea from. Oh, and I didn't close the quotes anyway, so it would have not worked. No matter what, it was not great. Empty reply from server. Okay, so authorization. I don't need any special other quotes. And then the other thing. I still have some double quotes. Okay, so hold on. Let's just do this again. So curl -h. We have authorization. Oh yeah, quotes there. I see it now. Okay, 3 in there like that, and I want to go to HTTP localhost 9011 API user to that. Isn't curl supposed to go out to standard out? Did that not work? I didn't get an empty reply this time, which is good. Sylvie, you wanna hang out? He's on the desk. He's just not visible by the camera. No, you're gonna. Oh wait, what happened to the camera? Oh, he knocked the camera off the table. Okay, you wanna come and hang out? No. Okay. He did not want to hang out. Rugmat, silly kitty. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what did I do wrong here? We have the authorization. I have my token like that. I close the quote. Do I need to quote the address? I didn't think I needed to. Leaking my secrets? Yeah, of course. This is all local-based authentication server. So as soon as I quit the Docker container, everything is gone, and this is not to anything production whatsoever. So it's going to be fine. Now I tested this. So this is a HTTP localhost 9011. Yeah, that's the exact thing. API user, and then that. So that's good. And then we have the authorization bearer token. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. Why did my curl not work? And it should be a get by default with curl. So that's good too. Well, anyways, unfortunately, you're just gonna have to take my word for it on this side because it's really small. But I'm able to see, let's see, user active true, connector ID, data. So I can see the email. I can see their ID. I can see like the last time that they logged in, what their memberships are for. They're not members of any roles, but I would be able to see roles here. I can see what tenant they're a member of. I can see if they have two-factor active or not. Their username status, if they're verified or not. This one has verified true, which that's interesting. And yeah, okay. Oh, there we go. Nice and big. So stuff. I can get like a bunch of different information about the user. The auth header is still not correct. Okay, that's probably what it is. Authorization. This is what it's supposed to be. Oh, yeah. There he goes. That's what I was not doing correctly. What's my size? Resize like that. There we go. Yeah, I forgot the bearer part. I forgot the bearer word. So out of that, we get this object, and we're able to see who the user is, what roles they have. This specific user, I should be able to give them a role. Let's see, users, manage you. So they're in that. They're in. Okay, so we can add a membership to the test group. Oh, I can do a full edit user. There's not really much I can do here though. It's just like some metadata. Consent sections. Oh, do they not? Is groups instead of roles? Is that how that works? I think that's how that works. Okay. No, there is a roles here. I would need to figure out how to add a role into a user. Let's go find that out. So not their API documentation. Okay, so this gives you manage complicated permissions. So permission systems is nice too. Okay, so you can delete. Okay, so that's APIs for do that roles. Okay, core concepts. Where do I go to create a role? Oh, it's just roles like that. Right, I remember now. That's when I was creating a user. Yes, they have just different what types of roles they are and what I can do. Yeah, I wonder. I didn't get the error. Or maybe curl won't tell me what the error is, but it clearly wasn't working until I actually added the bearer to it. Let's see. Yeah, there's also groups. Okay, those are for tenant. That's groups are more for tenancy, but it could also be with a role type thing. Yeah, so it could be assigned to a role or belong to a tenant. That's really much what the group is going to be about. So I think like with many of these managed systems, figuring out where stuff is going to be like the hardest part, right? Like that's where all the actual work of learning this comes in. Is like, okay, I need to figure out where the roles are. So can I search for role? Yeah, that just search for users. Users won't let me create. Yeah, it just lets me create a user itself. When I'm manage roles here. Okay, I have my testing. Oh, because the name of the application is testing, so it's testing roles. That's fun. So roles, testing role. This is a test role. You're not a super role. You're just a role like that. And so now can I add in that role to a user? Role. This is a test role, testing roles. Okay, so that's where I can add in the role now. And now when I come back and I get the user information, we can maybe see the role they're in. Yeah, roles, testing role. Okay, nice. So yeah, now we can do role-based authentication, and I can get which roles that the user has. Yeah, you're right. Skimmis, the roles were in the application because I can do per role per application, which is not something I'm used to, but I can see that being really nice too. Okay, so let's come back to our README. Let's see what of these questions can we answer now? So how is this scalable? So my guess is that I still think that's probably what it is. How easy it is to get started, more than 5 minutes, but still pretty simple. Absolutely. Can we have multiple roles shared across applications? So that is a really good question. If I come here and I create another application again, new test 2, add role. Okay, I don't see a way to import a role in. Under system, I don't see anything here about like a global role. Yeah, I don't think I can do a global role. Okay, so no roles are per application. Can we customize the self-registration to ask for custom data fields? So that's another thing that we were unable to figure out how to do. So custom login. Okay, I want something like this. This feature is only available in paid plans. Okay, now self-service registration. Is there something else that I can do? Like this page? Okay, so create a new application, configure basic registration, navigate to the applications tab, select the edit, navigate to registration, scroll down to the self-service registration, toggle the enabled switch on, the type radio button should have basic selected. Okay, so applications, testing, registration, self-service, basic, okay. You can toggle on the confirm password, leave the login type, set the email, set the registration fields as follows. First name enabled, last name enabled. Yeah, okay. All right, so I don't know if I can collect more than this information without paying for it, or at least without a license of some kind. That's what it feels like. And I have to look at the license information off stream, because that would be an actual like centralized application thing, like to the SaaS servers. So that's it looks like I can create like my own custom, like, hey, I want first name and last name, or maybe I don't care about that. Maybe I just want first name and email or username or something like that. I don't really care. Isn't there a group during the job of a shared role, sort of? You know what? That might be true. That might be true also. I haven't really thought about groups like very much because I'm not really sure how to use them, but I bet I could use them as part of Lambdas. And then that lets me like auto set them up with some kind of roles maybe. Okay, so can we customize self-registration acts for custom, not without a license? May or may not cost. Okay. Future plans. I am still up in the air with this. I'm not completely sure how I feel about it yet. I think that what I would need to do is actually attempt to build something with FusionAuth in order to then know, as like, okay, yes, I think this would be a good idea for me to swap out Auth0 with in the LMS, or we're going to start teaching with it. So I'll have to add that into the schedule. Like the next time I do an app, if there is any auth, we'll use FusionAuth for it. Another question would be, if a user is assigned to multiple roles in the application, whether and how do they get to pick the role to use? If it's anything like other systems, it's more of an admin thing to set what the roles are, right? Like if I create an admin page, that hits a backend, my backend then talks to FusionAuth server and says, now assign this role to them. But that's not a role that they would be able to select. That would be a role that I would tell them they have now. So like for the LMS, for example, I might say, hey, you are a learner. That's all you get. You're a learner. It's a default role. But I can be a learner. I also can be a author. That's it. And so I would have two roles, learner and author. And I think that makes sense. But okay, I think that's pretty much anything. Do any of you have any more questions about FusionAuth that we can look into? Otherwise, it's 12:45. We're getting, it's decently close to normal end time, so I'm okay ending it now. Plus, I ran out of drink, so I need to go upstairs and grab more and get lunch. Let's see. Go ahead and snooze the ads too, so we don't get that before we end. Anyways, the plan now is, let's see, no more streams for the rest of this week. I'm not sure what the plan is next week stream-wise. I am still planning on working on the stream manager. We're working on Anathema for that. And I want to continue working on the Bevy game with the machine learning side of it, but I'm also getting overwhelmed by just sort of like thinking about the amount of work that needs to go into it. And so I don't know. I haven't decided fully whether or not I want to jump back into that, or if I want to jump into this FusionAuth and maybe do like a simple application just for that. Like maybe we build like a to-do application or a blog or something like that with Auth just to play around with it and see how it is. Like actually try it for real, which is where I'm leaning right now, but I'll know a lot more by the time the weekend comes. And then when I make the schedule for next week. So with that, thank you everybody for hanging out today. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and I will see you next time. Have a good one, and bye.